日曜なんて大嫌いです。さてと。
Heavensward was the first expansion for Final Fantasy XIV. It came out in the summer of 2015 for PC, Mac, and PlayStations 3 through 5. As of 2020, it's also included within the game's free trial. That's right, this game is technically free. Just like with A Realm Reborn, there were patches that continue the story and set the stage for the following expansion. This added content being more primals and their corresponding equipment, a second set of 8-man raids, a new 24-man alliance raid, etc. It also introduced 3 new jobs: a new tank, Dark Knight, a new DPS, Machinist, and a new healer, Astrologian. Funnily enough, the NPCs who give you these jobs are physically located behind Ishgard's gates, so you have to finish A Realm Reborn to use any of them if you're interested. Heavensward itself feels a lot more to the point than A Realm Reborn. There are still some fetch quests here and there, especially in the beginning, but overall, compared to its predecessor, it's shorter, sweeter, and more action-packed. It never really overstays its welcome, and things tend to resolve right when you're about to get sick of it. A good chunk of the beginning is mostly becoming familiar with Ishgard and its surrounding areas, but after that, things do pick up pretty quickly, cool off after the main set of quests are finished, and then pick back up during the patch quests, which again, are not as long and sluggish as A Realm Reborn was. And yes, I am about to enter spoiler territory in a little bit. Almost everything new I have to talk about is related to the story, so this is your warning. I do have some concluding comments near the end, so you can skip to the timestamp if you want to hear that, but if you're still here, I'm assuming you've either played this part of the game already or you don't care, so let's get into it. So, Heavensward takes place literally minutes after A Realm Reborn, so you know the deal. Teleji and the Crystal Braves turned on the Scions, killed the Sultana, blamed it on you, and fucked up your reputation. Raubon got locked up for figuring things out and going apeshit at the banquet, the Scions got separated while trying to escape Ul'dah, and the only ones who got out unscathed were you, Alphinaud, and Tataru. And then together, the 3 of you escaped to Kurthus. And suddenly Alphinaud's balls dropped and landed in hell. Good grief. But yeah, a lot of the characters, at least in English, did get some voice actor changes in this one, so it will feel a little jarring at first. At least it did for me. But once Alphinaud kind of finishes sulking about losing the Crystal Braves and such, Horchafant recommends that we go to Ishgard and stay there until we get things figured out. So this is where all that work you put in during the Realm Reborn patches kind of pays off, because you guys might be foreigners, but House Fortom, which is the noble house that Horchafant himself serves, is more than happy to take you in, considering you helped Ishgard out with the heretics and the most recent dragon invasion. I do want to take a split second and talk about Thordan. As I said in the last video, Ishgard is a theocracy, which means Thordan, being the Archbishop, runs the place. He has a posse of knights, the Heavensward, who serves him as well. Get it? Heavensward, because the expansion is called Heavensward. These guys do end up placing Alphinaud and Tataru on trial for false charges of heresy, and it's after you bail them out that Thordan calls you in and apologizes for the inconvenience. You kinda just shrug it off and say, hey, it's no big deal. And then Thordan's all like, oh yes, and those Ascian folk, I've spoken with them a few times, taught me some neat little tricks, some nice life hacks. Nothing major, you know, just a little bit of primal summoning here and there. Totally not suspicious, right? The next noteworthy thing that happens is rescuing Raubon. I'm actually surprised how quickly that whole ordeal got resolved, considering it's what got you kicked out of 2.0. The group learns of his whereabouts, and you, Alphinaud, and Yugiri head down there to rescue him. You get to catch up with the Crystal Braves for a bit, namely Yu Hase, Laurentius, and Ilberd, the unholy trinity. After you save him, another member of the Syndicate, Dulala Dula, brings up some game-changing news. Not really, but it does bring some resolution to that last chunk of A Realm Reborn. The Sultana isn't actually dead. Lolorito did set the whole thing up, but not necessarily in the way we had initially thought. Now, if you think back, Lolorito and Teleji do not like each other. Teleji did intend to kill Nanamo, as we saw, but what actually happened was Lolorito learned of Teleji's plan ahead of time, and while the guy is still pretty corrupt and power-hungry, I guess killing off the Sultana and plunging Ul'dah into chaos wasn't part of his vision. So he paid off Nanamo's assistant to switch the poison out with a sleeping drug instead, which knocks her out enough so that she'd seem dead but wasn't actually dead. And then, as compensation for the whole ordeal, Raubon gets his position back, I'm no longer a wanted criminal, and they basically just sweep the whole thing under the rug and pretend like nothing happened. I'm just saying, that Heavensward trailer, the CGI one, kinda made this whole Sultana situation look like a bigger deal than it was actually gonna be. Then, let's go back to the issue with the dragons. Remember, Ishgard and the dragons are currently at war, and the dragons are getting ready for another round. So Alphino recommends we find Ysayle, aka Iceheart, since she probably has the greatest chance of convincing the dragons to back off. Estinian, one of Ishgard's famed Azure Dragoons, also insists on coming. I say one of because I'm the other one. Side note, if you played the Dragoon questline before Heavensward, Estinian shows up as the sort of main antagonist of those quests, and then at the end of it, he succumbed to Nidhogg's power. I'll talk more about Nidhogg in a second. At the end of the questline, and his whereabouts were kind of just left ambiguous. It's implied that he disappeared or worse, but none of that really matters anymore because he returned late into the Realm Reborn patches, and you're on much better terms now, and the only thing he seems to recall is the fact that you also hold the title of Azure Dragoon, so I'm not really sure about the consistency there, but roll with it. Anyway, Ysayle and Estinian are the two other major companions apart from Alphino who travel with you for most of base Heavensward. And it's actually really funny because Estinian serves in Ishgard's military, his job is obviously to kill dragons, and Ysayle is a heretic who's trying to make friends with them. So because of their ideological differences, they obviously can't stand each other. And it was kind of funny seeing them argue often, with Ysayle being the one who's more open to talking things over with the dragons most of the time, and Estinian being one wrong word away from drawing his spear on them. Ysayle suggests we talk to Hraesvelgr, one of the 7 Great Worms. Hraesvelgr is Nidhogg's brother, and Nidhogg himself is the current leader of the Dragon Horde. However, Nidhogg is kind of an extremist, and his anger towards mankind is still very fresh in his mind, and he's long past the point of talking. Hraesvelgr, on the other hand, is slightly nicer, and fun fact, he's the one who fucked Shiva all those years ago, so he might be a little more inclined to hear us out. On the way to Hraesvelgr's flat, we run into a new beast tribe. These little insect dudes called the Nath. And they have a complementary primal as well, Ravana. So we defeat him, promise the Nath that both Ishgard and soon the dragons will leave them alone, and summoning that giant General Grievous looking bug isn't necessary, and then continue onward. We finally make it to Hraesvelgr's lair, and that's when the plot thickens. We're talking from chicken broth to a bowl of oatmeal, people. Hraesvelgr's all like, "Hey, Ysayle, wanna know something? You're a fraud." And a fraud she is. The Shiva that she can summon isn't the real one. It's a copy that's conjured up from Ysayle and her fellow heretics' own desires. So yeah, that kind of takes most of the meat and potatoes out of their cause, considering they thought they had the real Shiva's approval. Secondly, this war that's been going on between mankind and the dragons. The dragons didn't start it. Mankind did. I can't say human because this game is also teeming with elves, potatoes, cat people, bigger cat people, dragon people, giants, and bunnies, who are all as sentient and able-bodied as another human, so yeah, I gotta stick with saying mankind. Where was I? Right, so Ishgard and the dragons were fighting. Hraesvelgr and Shiva were doing their little interspecies relationship. The original Shiva died, and then man and dragon formed a pact after that, promising not to attack each other anymore. However, 200 years later, Thordan, not the current one, that's Thordan the 7th, I'm talking about Thordan the 1st, decided to break that. He and his knights went and beat the shit out of Nidhogg's sister. Then they took both of her eyes because taking a dragon's eyes can grant you their powers. But they didn't just, take them, they literally ate them, so every native Ishgardian related to Thordan the 1st or any of his buddies probably has a little bit of dragon blood running through their veins, regardless of their current social class. Then Nidhogg, understandably pissed, kills Thordan the 1st in retaliation, and then Thordan's son, Haldreth, fights Nidhogg and manages to take his eyes. Haldreth then declines the throne, feeling that he's been tainted by the dragons, and instead he hands the authority over to his 4 companions, who would eventually become the 4 great houses of Ishgard. Meanwhile, Haldreth became the first dragoon, and he began passing his knowledge and newfound powers from the eyes from generation to generation. And now we're here. The relationship between mortal and dragon has quite literally been an eye for an eye. However, even with this newfound information, Nidhogg has still gotta go. Estinian, being the current Azure Dragoon, gets to keep one of Nidhogg's eyes and draw from its powers. He and I head up to Nidhogg's lair. Estinian figures out how Glamour Dye works, and he also takes Nidhogg's other eye. So we've managed to kill him. For now. Wait, you said Ishgard was already in possession of both of Nidhogg's eyes, so where did Nidhogg get another one? Oh, that. Yeah, apparently after he lost both of his eyes to Haldrath, he asked Hraesvelgr for one of his eyes. These dudes are passing around eyes like they're goddamn Uchihas or something. And then he used Hraesvelgr's borrowed power for his invasion right after Haldrath's victory. Anyway, we head back to Ishgard to find Ysael's own heretics tearing the place up, so while she and Horchafon are trying to calm everyone down, Alphino and I head in to tell House Fortom that Ishgard was 100% in the wrong here, the four houses have no biological ties to Thordan's lineage at all, and their entire religion, which demonized the dragons and painted Ishgard as the victims, has been a lie. I know, organized religion being bad in a JRPG. Never seen that before, right? Aymeric, who you might remember from the previous patches, elects to be the one who breaks the bad news to Thordan, and Thordan is all like, "You punk-ass bitch, I already knew this. The foundation of Ishgard is literally built on this shit. What did you expect me to do? Tell them the truth?" And Aymeric's kinda like, kinda? And he gets arrested for heresy. We sort of need him though, so his tier 3 simp, his right-hand woman, Lucia, plans a rescue mission. A mix of supporting knights as well as some revolutionaries from off the streets. You fight off a few of Thordan's temple knights as you make your way through the vault, and strangely enough, each of these knights are able to transform during battle in a very similar fashion to how Ysael can use Shiva by literally turning into her. Wonder who taught them the primal hoodoo voodoo. We managed to rescue Aymeric, but unfortunately, those motherfuckers killed off Horchafont, one of the few people who made the Kurthus stretch of A Realm Reborn bearable. Do you know how much it hurts to walk into that room, find an empty chair? The game has never felt the same without him. Anyway, now that it's all but confirmed that whatever Thordan's been talking about with the Ascians can't be good, we chase him into the Sea of Clouds. The Garlean Empire, yeah, remember those guys? The other Thordan on your side? They're also after Thordan. You both meet up in the Sea of Clouds, where the Empire is currently harassing the Vanu Vanu, the beast tribe who lives there. After we chase the Empire off, the Vanu Vanu give us some details on where Thordan is headed, as he's law. However, to get the key to get in, we have to defeat their corresponding primal, Bismarck. Wasn't really upset though. The fight had good music, the scenery was nice. You could say I had a whale of a time. Unfortunately, Thordan and company swoop in to snatch the key from me while I'm distracted, meaning there's nothing stopping him from heading up to Azzy's Law and fucking around. We try and chase them with Sid's airship only to be stopped dead in our tracks by a giant barrier. Around this time, the Immortal Flames found a lead on Y'shtola who might be able to help us with our problem. Apparently she used some teleportation magic to whisk both herself and Thancred away from harm back when we were running from the Crystal Braves and Brass Blades. However, since she did it hastily and without a set destination, she got trapped in the lifestream. Hey, Final Fantasy VII reference. So we do manage to pull her out. Her sister helps too, and interestingly enough, you meet her sister during the Summoner quest line, so that's kinda cool. Same goes for Connie Senna's siblings, who kinda coached you during the White Mage quest, and both do acknowledge that you've met them before if you've already done those quests. So we get Y'shtola back, but unfortunately she's lost her sight. And her clothes. And we can only fix one of those. So, new outfit it is. Even better, she doesn't know how to get over the barrier. But she does know someone who can, her old master Matoya. Matoya tells us that we can obtain the research needed to break the barrier. These two games have forever ruined the word barrier for me, I swear to God. I retrieve the book in question and Sid uses it to install a piece of equipment that can pierce through the barrier. While we're doing that, we get attacked by a giant Imperial battleship, led by the commander of the 6th Squadron, Regula Van Hydrus. Ysael transforms into Shiva to distract them, and she does get gunned down and joins Horchafont in the afterlife, but she did manage to buy us enough time to finally break through and officially enter Azzy's Law. Azzy's Law is actually powered by 3 primals, the Warring Triad. They're currently statues because their life force is being used to power the area, but yeah, massive Final Fantasy VI reference there. You learn some more Allegan history. Allegans have great technology, gave the dragons a run for their money. If you played Binding Coils before Heavensward, this isn't new information, but it was new to me at the time because I hadn't. Midgar Somer, the father of all dragons, had been traveling with you since the Realm Reborn patches, and now convinced that you actually are as cool as awesome as people say you are, takes you to the Etherochemical Research Building. You're currently tracking down 2 Ascians, La Habrea, who's back by the way, forgot to mention that, and Ignore him? I don't fucking know. Don't dwell on it too much, it's not like she's gonna be around for much longer. You confront them at the heart of the facility, and they actually fuse together into a larger, creepier looking Ascian Prime. Fun fact, I played and recorded this part of the game a year ago, before they revamped a lot of the old dungeons. The fight is a lot harder now, but you beat their fused form too, because you're the main character and shit, and using Moonbreeda's same strategy from before, along with Nidhogg's left eye as the power source, you managed to permanently kill Iggy. Having spent the bulk of that eye's power to deal with ignorant Ham, Lahabrea thinks he's in the clear, until Thordan shows up and reveals his true intentions. So like I said before, when Haldreth defeated Nidhogg, he took both of his eyes, and while Nidhogg's left eye was given to a succession of Azure Dragoons to draw strength from, his right one was stored away with Haldreth's corpse. Thordan planned to use Nidhogg's remaining eye along with all of the faith and prayers from the church to turn himself and the rest of the Heavensward into a primal. All 13 of them would now move in conjunction as one absolute unit of holy Knights of the Round. They turned themselves into Knights of the Round. I wonder if Thordan had to grind out any chocobos to get his version. Thordan declares himself God King, which is kind of redundant if you ask me. If you call yourself a god, then it's kind of assumed you're ruling over something. Anyway, Thordan uses his new power to finish off Lahabrea, and then stops for a second to talk to me. Hey, Warrior of Light, look at me. I've become a god now. But because I'm kind of a fair guy, I'll give you a chance to surrender and accept my rule. Huh, very interesting. You know, I'm something of a god eater myself. What? We're eating Ishgardian waffles this morning. All 13 of them. We're not really waffle people. We like pancakes more, and I think you missed the part where I said I was a god. That doesn't really mean much. I killed my first god at like level 20. Plus the other 7 people here probably have max level equipment anyway, and they're just here to finish their daily roulettes. This shouldn't take too long. Wait a minute. There are other Warriors of Light? Just how many people did Heidelin give this stupid plot armor to? According to the statistics, roughly a few million active players per day. You know, I'm starting to realize maybe this primal shit ain't all it's cracked up to be. Munch munch, motherfucker. Okay, real quick, the Thordan fight itself wasn't that hard. Visual spectacle, absolutely, but it still ended pretty quickly. I might have to go back and properly do his extreme version one day since I only did it unsynced to farm his mount. Estinian shows up shortly afterwards. That's how you know he's a true story NPC. He sits out the dungeon and doesn't show up until it's all over. Anyway, Estinian retrieves the 2 eyes, one from you, the other from Thordan, and just as he's expressing relief that it's all finally over, while his guard's down and he's holding both eyes, mind you, Nidhogg himself slithers in and he's all like, you thought it was over. You sweet summer child, we've still got patch quests to do. He then possesses Estinian and uses his body as a base to restore his original form and then dips. Yep, the hardships just keep coming. Everyone seems determined to not let that little part about Nidhogg ruin their day though. We get back to Ishgard and it officially becomes a part of the Eorzean alliance alongside Gridania, Limsa, and Ul'dah, with Ishgard's next goal being to work towards mending their damaged relationship with the dragons. And trust me, there's plenty of work to be done. But before that, as I said, it's time for patch quests and bonus content. Just like with A Realm Reborn, there's a series of quests that were added gradually to bridge the gap between Heavensward and the next expansion, Stormblood. So I figure every expansion is going to be following this pattern from here on out. First order of business, finding the missing scions. You even meet a new friend. Kryl joins the group. She was an old friend of Minfilia's, and she's going to help you out. You find Thancred soon after that, as well as a new set of villains, the Warriors of Darkness. Pretty interesting since he looks identical to the stand-in character that's shown in the trailers, and that guy is supposed to represent you. But to clear this up, the Warriors of Darkness are not the same group of adventurers from A Realm Reborn's opening movie. They come from another dimension, they just look exactly like them. But forget about them for the minute. Thancred's back. Meanwhile, things are looking rough back in Ishgard. Not everyone's on board with the whole forgive and forget message that's being pushed right now. Shit's been happening in the wake of Thordan's fall. The man was right about one thing. Even if it was all a lie, it still gave the city some order. It'd be a wound that'll be very hard to mend, and violent uprisings have been happening as a result. Someone even attempts to assassinate Amaric one night. On the dragon side of things, of course, you've got Nidhogg ready to throw hands. Or claws, I guess. Hraesvelgur's pretty neutral about it, and he's letting each dragon decide for his or herself what they want to do, while his daughter, Vidofnir, seems to have fully sided with peace, and she serves as somewhat of an envoy between the two groups. The Scions are still trying to find Minfilia, and surprisingly, their search leads them to Hydaelyn. My character makes contact with her, only to find Minfilia herself where Hydaelyn should be. How'd she grow her hair out so fast? How long has it been since A Realm Reborn? I can't imagine it's that long, but the game never really tells you. Minfilia is now the word of the mother, because it seems Hydaelyn's grown so weak that she can't even talk to us anymore and needs a spokesperson. Hydaelyn, through Minfilia, gives you a little history lesson. So, long ago, light and darkness coexisted in equal amounts. Hydaelyn was the light, and Zodiark, which by the way is the god that the Ascians worship, was the darkness. Zodiark tried to rebel one day, so Hydaelyn cast him out and incarcerated him inside of the moon. As a result of this, Hydaelyn ended up inadvertently creating 14 copies of the universe. The original, which is called the Source, that's where we live, and then 13 other ones. Keyblade! This is why the Ascians are out fucking around, because if they can collapse the 13 other universes back into the Source, they can free Zodiark, and I guess causing umbral calamities can help expedite this. And since Hydaelyn is now too weak to stop them, guess who has to pick up the slack? Yep. So I get back and tell everyone present that while Minfilia is still technically alive and well, she's not available. Not that she was ever that much help to begin with. She really wasn't. Back to Ishgard, so Amric was going to hold an event to talk about peace between mankind and dragons. However, a few people have different ideas. There's a banquet before the main event because, you know, banquets and I totally go together, right? And nothing could possibly go wrong. The only difference is I'm the one who gets drugged and knocked out this time. While I was out, the same girl and some others tried to stage a protest to deter Ishgard's people from making peace with the dragons. Emanelian, one of Count Edmund de Fortom's sons, actually he's the klutzier one to be honest, but he orders one of the soldiers to stop her. The soldier misinterprets what he's saying and ends up shooting her with an arrow, which just causes the whole event to fall apart. So Amric has a plan B. He's going to talk to the rest of the Eorzean Alliance and see if they'll agree to a grand melee, essentially a scrimmage match between Ishgard and the other city-states in order to boost Ishgard's morale. Emanelian opts to join, and they recruit me for Ishgard's side as well. Kinda cheating if you ask me. They must have known I was going to carry whichever team I ended up on. Yeah, get the literal Godslayer to participate. Totally balanced and fair fight. I should have been sitting in a lounge chair sipping hot cocoa watching everyone else bust their asses for once, but I digress. At least I got to fight Based Raubon. Dude's actually pretty tough, even when he's missing an arm. The melee ends with Ishgard winning, surprising absolutely no one, and now that everyone isn't depressed anymore, Amric tries to give his little declaration of peace again, only to be interrupted by another special guest. Hey, remember me? I still exist, you know. Nidhogg is done gathering his horde to attack Ishgard again, and the people of Ishgard, even the ones open to making peace with the dragons at this point, have concluded that Nidhogg does need to die. Again, enough is enough. You, Alphino, and Amric go to visit Hraesvelgr to ask for his help. Again. At first Hraesvelgr refuses, but then one dungeon run later he changes his stance and even gives you all a ride back. Nidhogg, meanwhile, is already at the final steps of faith and knocking on Ishgard's door. Time for the final showdown. Hey, Nidhogg, bro, listen, we need to talk. This Dragon Song War shit, it's gone on long enough. The guys who screwed us over aren't even alive anymore, dude. These people here now know what happened, and they've already said they're sorry. What more do you want from them? If you don't shut your traitorous cuck ass up. Excuse me? I always knew that little girlfriend of yours was gonna bring nothing but trouble. I told you. I fucking told you that relationship was never gonna go anywhere, and you'd be worse off for it. Now look at you. You've gone completely soft. Are you talking about Shiva? Dude, she's been dead for like a millennium. Listen, man, can we not piss on her grave today? It's been kind of stressful, and I'd rather not be reminded of the fact that I literally had to eat her. And what's the problem? You were probably eating her out long before you actually ate her. So these guys take to the sky and start fighting, and it seems pretty even at first, but then our giant needy hog over here gets the upper hand and manages to overpower Hraesvelgr. However, at some point during the commotion, Hraesvelgr removed one of his eyes and gave it to, guess who? You're betting it all on that little Aura over there? Trust me, it's a safe bet. She's killed primals before. I'm not a primal. You're a high-ranking dragon and you have your own trial. Close enough. The final battle with Nidhogg was fantastic, having Dragon Song playing during the cutscene and then transitioning into the first phase of the fight while it was still playing added lots of weight to the whole thing, and copyright notices. And then the songs for his second and third phases somehow managed to be even better, at least in my opinion. Obviously, this version of Nidhogg was tougher than his earlier dungeon counterparts since he had both of his eyes back. He even turned into a weird draconic looking version of Estinian for phase 2, before finishing off with a glowed up version of his regular form for the final phase. And as I was playing through this fight and taking it all in and not paying attention to the mechanics, much to my healer's dismay, I realized something. Heavensward is a great expansion. And Ishgard was a damn good city-state. Just that sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing these people mostly welcomed you in with open arms when both you and them were at your lowest points, and you gradually built each other back up bit by bit, clearing my name, finding my missing friends, helping them with the dragon invasions, exposing the truth behind Ishgard's theocracy, overturning it, but then also staying behind and working to help everyone adjust to their new reality, all culminating with everyone uniting to stop one of the last remaining pieces of Ishgard's bloodstained past, who himself couldn't let go of the past, and I don't know what I'm saying anymore. The fight was good and the music was bomb-ass. We managed to turn Nidhogg back into Estinian, then you and Alphino, with an extra boost from Horchefant Ysael's ghost, managed to pry Nidhogg's eyes off of Estinian's armor, which frees him from Nidhogg's control. Amric orders you to chuck the eyes over the bridge and into the abyss, because there's no way anyone could possibly find them down there and use them again. Right. Estinian recovers after a while, and you get to see what he looks like without a helmet. That's the most important part. He also says that since his mission is complete, with Nidhogg being dead and all, he has no need to keep his Azure Dragoon title, so I guess that just leaves me. Except I don't really have any hostile dragons left to kill either, so I guess dragon season's officially over. Amric steps down as leader and says Ishgard will become a republic that elects its leaders from now on. And plot-wise, even though this came out as a patch, this is technically the true ending of Heavensward. Every plot thread directly related to it has been resolved. From here on out, they're just setting up for Stormblood. So Amric and I are eating dinner when Thancred comes in saying he's found Alice and she's been poisoned. It's also the game low-key telling you that you'd better have finished binding coils by now. As Alice is recovering, she gives us an update on the Warriors of Darkness. Apparently, whatever it is they're planning with the Ascians requires them to kill primals on purpose, as in let the beast tribes summon them over and over again, and then these Warriors of Darkness come in and kill them repeatedly. Hey, who knows? Maybe they're just farming mounts. Anyway, the next target is an Ixal tribe, so we head over there and manage to defeat their leader before they can summon Garuda again. As anticipated, the Warriors of Darkness arrive shortly afterward, accompanied by a tall Elizin man with platinum-colored hair who speaks in Old English. Gee, wonder who that could be. The Warriors of Darkness explain that the world we currently live in is the source, the original. The universe that they come from was the one closest to the light, the first. This means that the darkness in their universe wasn't very potent, so when the Ascians came and started shit in their dimension, they managed to take care of it with little effort. Unfortunately, this meant that the light in their world, which as you can imagine they had way more of, was able to exist uncontested, and it basically bleached out all life over there, essentially doing the same thing that the darkness would have typically done anywhere else. So they're joining up with the remaining Ascians in an attempt to keep a balance between the two, since they've seen firsthand that having too much light is just as bad as having too much darkness. However, that plan still involves fucking us over, sort of, because what these Warriors of Darkness are trying to do is force calamities in each of the other universes so that Hydaelyn will be forced to absorb the fallen worlds back into the source, at least I think. I'm gonna be honest, this part of the story got a bit convoluted. Long story short, Mr. Totally Not Urianger over here sets us up against the Warriors of Darkness, and unlike us, the Warriors of Darkness are more akin to Ascians. They're technically already dead and their lives, I'm using air quotes there, are bound to these small crystals. So as long as those crystals have aether in them, they can keep respawning again and again, kinda like you do during gameplay. Alice decides now's as good of a time as any to try out her pre-Red Mage skills, and on Urianger's cue, both of our groups, as well as the Warriors of Darkness, are dragged into the Ethereal Sea, where we get another visit from Hydaelyn and Minfilia, I mean the Word of the Mother. So basically Minfilia, because she's under Hydaelyn's control, but I'm just calling her Minfilia for simplicity's sake, is taking the souls of the Warriors of Darkness back to the first dimension. There she'll absorb all of the excess light, and then the Warriors of Darkness will get to move on into the livestream without being stuck in the light-filled limbo or whatever that they would have gotten trapped in normally. Another thing, Alamigo is kinda the Empire's bitch right now. While there is a resistance, there has emerged a smaller but more radical splinter group led by a guy called the Griffin. Well, technically Griffin's spokesperson, the real one usually stays in the background, but he's extremely radical and he wants to liberate Alamigo no matter the cost. Wonder who he could be. He gave a speech about how he just acquired some great power that would help them defeat the Empire so they could reclaim Girabania, which was the region they previously had before they lost it to the Empire. We managed to find Ida and Papalimo in the crowd and asked them what the fuck is going on here. They said they've been hanging out around here this whole time helping the Alamegan resistance as a way of thanking them for helping the two escape Ul'dah at the end of A Realm Reborn. They also mentioned that the reason the Griffin has not contacted the Scions, despite this potentially being a Scion-related issue, is because he doesn't trust us, or like us. Radical, wants to free Alamigo, doesn't like or trust the Scions. Who is this guy? Have we met before? Anyway, Ida and Papalimo rejoined the Scions. Yay, everyone's back together again, and Papalimo's gone. Okay, of course I can't just leave it at that, I'll back up and explain, but seriously, why even bother reuniting him with everyone if you were just gonna kill him off one patch later? So not long after we dealt with the Warriors of Darkness, Elidibus, the Ascian in white, met with the real Griffin and gave him, wait for it, Nidhogg's eyes. I fucking told you we should have just stomped on him, but nobody listens to me. We're in the Rising Stones. Oh yeah, we got our old base back, by the way, and I'm glad for it, but as we're discussing who should be the new leader of the Scions, spoiler alert, nobody, someone from the Alamegan Resistance bursts in through the door and she's wounded badly. She said that Griffin plans to start a new war involving the Eorzean Alliance and the Imperials near Girabania by assaulting Baelsar's Wall, which is what separates Girabania from the Black Shroud in Gridania. We go around and warn all the city-state leaders about what's gonna happen. They meet in Gridania and try and figure out how the fuck are we gonna solve this. The plan we settled on was Ishgard's forces, along with the Doman refugees, would join the Grand Companies and help do the bulk of the fighting to keep the chaos contained. Ida, Papalimo, Thancred, and Ugarte were instructed to sneak in through the tunnel to the Girabanian side of the wall to try and convince Griffin to stop the fighting before it even begins. Alphino, myself, and a few others would simply keep an eye on things and make sure nothing got too far out of hand. And of course, that's exactly what ended up happening. So it turns out the whole thing was a trap. Griffin dressed up all of his men to look like Grand Company soldiers so that the Empire would think the Eorzean Alliance was endorsing this. Us fortifying our borders in anticipation of retaliation from the Empire also isn't going to help our case, optically speaking. Alphino tries to follow the group we sent through the secret tunnel to tell them it's a trap, leaving me to deal with the wall itself. We catch up with Griffin and he takes off his mask and holy shit, it's Ilberd! He ruined one set of patches for you and he's about to do it again. We beat the shit out of him, again, but Ilberd says the plan's already done. And I'm a bit confused because it seems like the rogue resistance members were doing just fine down there. But of course, I forgot about the other two members of the Unholy Trinity, Yuyuhase and Laurentius. So these two were on the other side of the wall posing as Imperial soldiers, and they released these robot spiders on their own men. And you'd better believe these spiders were running the duty unsynced because they cleared out the resistance soldiers in like 30 seconds. So then Ilberd takes Nidhogg's eyes, and I thought he was going to use them to revive Nidhogg again or something, and that's what his big plan to oppose the Empire was, but no, not necessarily. He just jumped off the edge. Yeah, just, you know, splat. Just like that. I mean, I'm glad he's dead now, but damn, that was a bit anticlimactic. Or so I initially thought, because the will of all those dead resistance members combined with the power source of Nidhogg's eyes started to summon a new primal, and apparently this one was going to be even stronger than Bahamut. It's at this point that Papalimo steps up and he suggests using Louis Sua's same sealing ritual from the previous calamity to cage up the primal before it fully takes form. But of course it's going to cost him his life, so yeah, that's the story of how Papalimo came back only to die a couple hours later, and by the way, the primal is still taking form, it's just going to need extra time to bust out of the prison, so Papalimo didn't stop it altogether, he just bought us some time. Everyone, upon hearing the news, decides to meet up again and discuss this, and this is where Nero comes in. So Nero was working under Gaius back in A Realm Reborn, and then he sorta just started messing around on his own after Gaius's death. He even helped you a little bit during the Crystal Tower side quest. Anyway, we were racking our brains trying to figure out how to stop the new primal when it inevitably breaks free, and Nero recommends we bring out Omega. You remember Omega Weapon, right? The thing that Telechi was desperately trying to get a hold of? The Allegan robot that we were saying could match Bahamut? So Nero suggests let's just go down there, switch it on, and let it take care of the primal for us. Obviously, the risk being if we can't control it, or it falls into Imperial hands, we'll have to contend with that too, but no one can think of a better alternative, so we agree, and the city-state leaders give us permission to go and activate Omega. Other news, a very large samurai has washed up on Eorzean shores. Apparently there's trouble in Doma and he's come come to retrieve Yugiri. We explain to him that she's kinda busy helping us right now, and once he figures out it's the Empire we're fighting, he's like, oh, seriously? Yeah, fuck those guys, I don't like them either, carry on. But as soon as you're done, she's coming back with me. So we activate Omega, and right around then, the Primal finally breaks out of Papalimo's prison. It's Shinryu. They start fighting each other in a rather cool looking cutscene. Unfortunately, the fight was a draw. No, maybe I shouldn't say unfortunately, because it could have been worse. Shinryu could have won, and then we'd really be in trouble. Both end up incapacitating each other and end up in God knows where. Sid decides to switch on stasis mode in case the Empire finds Omega and tries to use it for themselves. We all meet up again and decide to send Raubon and his son up ahead to preemptively secure the wall, and we're planning on allying with the Resistance in Gyr Albania should the Empire actually decide to wage war with us, which, after everything that's just happened, seems very likely right now. Wait, there's one more plot twist though. Ida isn't actually Ida. The real Ida died years ago, and the Ida we've been interacting with has been her younger sister, Lise. Lise decided to take up her sister's position within the Circle of Knowing, and that's why she wore that mask and hat all the time. Although this is only a surprise to you, the player, since it seems all the other Scions already knew about this but didn't say anything. Lise figures her duty to the Alamegan Resistance is long overdue, so our next stop is Gyr Albania, to join up with the Resistance and then liberate Alamigo once and for all to loosen the Empire's grip there. Who, by the way, is probably extra pissed that we went and ruffled their feathers and is probably looking to bite us back the first chance they get. So yeah, that's Heavensward and its patches for you. I'm gonna quickly run through the rest of the extra content you get to do after finishing base Heavensward. Okay, first of all, I just want to give a shout out to the level 30 to 50 Dark Knight job quest for being the only job quest so far besides Rogue, Ninja, and Summoner kind of that didn't put me to sleep. So as with the other two jobs introduced in Heavensward, you find the Dark Knight NPC in Ishgard. A mysterious knight was caught fighting using dark magic, which amongst the Temple Knights is like a no-no. The knights manage to kill him and they leave his corpse sitting in the broom area. This is where you find him, and his job stone. Now for most other jobs, you receive the stone from your mentor, or it's handed down to you. In this case, you literally just pluck it off of the guy's corpse. Then you lose consciousness, and when you wake up again, the corpse appears to be alive and well. He calls himself Frey and becomes your mentor for the job up until level 50. And Frey does the usual, tells you some background info about the job. In the Dark Knight's case, it's defending the weak, protecting the innocent, and punishing the guilty. So similar to Paladins, but with a lot more emphasis on the punishment part. However, after a while, Frey starts acting weird. He keeps encouraging you to be more aggressive and assertive. He keeps complaining about you being too much of a pushover, and becomes increasingly more and more agitated as you take on more people's requests. Hey, would you look at that? He hates fetch quest too. I can imagine A Realm Reborn probably drove the dude insane. Frey also starts saying and doing things, and people hear about it and blame you. Interesting. By level 50, you're running your millionth errand only for the Temple Knights to accuse you of heresy. Apparently talking to corpses is also against the rules. Anyway, you catch up to Frey, except it's not really Frey. The real Frey was already dead and stayed dead. This quote-unquote Frey that you've been talking to has actually been your own darkness that simply possessed the corpse. So this whole time, I've been getting mentored by my own negative emotions, and now that it's tired of my shit, it's ready to fight. But of course, it seems even my own shadow forgot how awesome I was. I beat her, me. Ugh, whatever, you get the point. And then Shadow Me begrudgingly kind of backs down and says, alright, listen, if you ever get the hint, and realize how bullshit this whole game is, I'll be waiting. Just saying. No one fucks shit up better than me. Or you. Or us. Fuck it. I wish I could say the same from level 50 to 60 was just as good, but it really wasn't. It's mostly about a new guy called Sittergu who becomes your new mentor, and this girl he's babysitting. Oh yeah, there was her crazy ass mom too, but it was mostly uneventful compared to the straight up gold that came before it. And apparently it was so good that people were even telling me that they went and got that same writer to do the entire storylines for both Shadowbringers and Endwalkers, so now I'm definitely looking forward to getting to those parts of 14. But yeah, Dark Knight. Fun class. It's been one of my favorites so far, and my favorite tank so far. Although Gunbreaker is the only tank I haven't played yet, so my opinion on that could still change. So the Warring Triad, like I said before, was in Azzy's Law. They're a set of 3 primals, the Fiend, Sephiroth... without the H, the goddess Sophia, and the demon Zervin. When Thordan came here and turned himself and the Heavensward into Knights of the Round, this shook things up just enough for the Triad to break free, though you fight them one by one instead of at the same time. Regula also dies during the fight with Zervin. I only bring that up because he's absent in all of the post-Heavensward MSQ, and if you skip over this part of the game, you'll be wondering what happened to him. Another thing worth noting, the little boy you were working with for the duration of the questline, Unu Kalhai, comes from the 13th dimension. Since his was the closest to the darkness, it got swallowed up and became the Void, in a very similar fashion to how the Warriors of Darkness had their world overrun by light. And, as you can probably guess, the light that he did have at his disposal was too feeble to contend with all that darkness, so he escaped here, and he's also working with the Ascians to restore balance. I'm starting to wonder, how evil are these guys really? Like, it seems like all the fucked up stuff they do is kind of to prevent something even more fucked down the line. Like, it isn't just me, right? So this is a series of 8-man raids, obviously revolving around the primal Alexander, the Heavensward equivalent to Binding Coils of Bahamut. I'm gonna try and breeze through these next two parts quickly because I don't want this video to end up being a billion years long. Dear Goblins, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? These guys are scary, like Jesus, but yeah, essentially a giant building-sized robot, Alexander, if you've played any of the other Final Fantasy games that he's appeared in, emerges from the water and Cid freaks out, identifying it as a primal. So there's this subset of goblins that call themselves the Illuminati, and they're led by a guy called Quick Thinks All Thoughts. Poor guy. Probably got bullied like a motherfucker back in school. Their goal is to fully activate Alexander and rule the world with him. He's big enough to live on, and because he can control time, Quick Thinks would have him go and edit history and essentially make the world, past, present, and future, perfect, at least by his standards. No, like this dude was talking about New World Order without a hint of irony in his voice. Along for the ride is another Aura named Mide, who is exploring Alexander with you in hopes of finding the soul of her boyfriend, which she believes was trapped inside of Alexander after a failed ritual they tried to perform. Long story short, you fight your way through Alexander, enjoy some time-looping mindfuckery made bearable by a very catchy OST, and at the end of it all, Peak Mid jumps into Alexander's core, and what do you know, her boyfriend was in there the entire time. And apparently they ended up getting dropped off thousands of years into the past, and there they start their own tribe, and, you know, their descendants go down and down and down till the present day. However, the tribe that they started is the same one that they belong to in the present. And another thing, Mide's present tribe was Zila, the same tribe as my characters. And if she went back to the past to restart her own tribe that she was already a part of in the present, did this bitch just work her way to the top of my family tree? I hate time paradoxes. Essentially the Heavensward equivalent of Crystal Tower. It's an alliance raid about ghost ships, sky pirates, Kate Sith, and Diabolos. It's also 24-man, so as long as 1/3 of the people know what they're doing, you'll be fine. Moving on. Heavensward was far better than A Realm Reborn. As I said, it was paced better, the new content they added after the base game was pretty good, it was just overall a much better experience. I will say, if I'm to be a bit blunt here for a minute, this belief that Heavensward single-handedly redeems all of A Realm Reborn's flaws is overemphasized. The thing with A Realm Reborn is that, despite all the shit I've been talking about it, there were still parts of it I liked and enjoyed that kept me going, as I somewhat had said back in the video about it. But if none of that is the case for you as you're going through A Realm Reborn, I don't think Heavensward will single-handedly save the game for you, and I don't think it should be wrong or taboo to admit this. Like, yes, is it better than A Realm Reborn in almost every way? Yeah, but someone coming to the conclusion that going through an entire JRPG's worth of quote-unquote boring content to get to the good stuff is a turnoff is valid. Granted, this is only the first expansion, I have no idea how things will look from here, but I did want to touch on that as a final thought before closing out. But outside of that, you know, I'm loving it so far. I figure most of the player base is in it because they either really like MMOs or they really like Final Fantasy. I happen to fall into the latter group. I just started Stormblood and I'm pretty excited to see what happens next. But I'm just saying, with the game's recent boom in popularity, if you happen to realize that the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV with an expanded free trial in which you can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heavensward expansion up to level 60, and soon to be Stormblood at level 70, for free with no restrictions on playtime isn't for you, that's okay. Anyway, that will conclude my review of Heavensward, so you all know what to do. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, sub to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys within the next millennium.
What?
I mean, I gotta be realistic here. It'll probably be a while before that Stormblood video comes out, just saying.